Welcome back to the GCSE Maths Pro YouTube channel. Today's video is the third part of negative and fractional indices, specifically where we're going to look at combining both types. So you will need to check out these other two videos first, where we go through separately how to work out negative indices and how to work out fractional indices, because today's video we're just going to be combining the two. This screen I had when we looked at fractional indices. It's just to basically say that because this topic is non-calculator, it will come up on your non-calculator test. Obviously, you should already know the square numbers anyway, but I do always recommend memorizing these few cube numbers. Obviously, 1 cubed makes no sense, makes no difference, it's just 1 anyway, isn't it? But from 2 to 5 cubes, so 8, 27, 64, 125. Memorize those, become familiar with those, because that will help you a lot when you're dealing with fractional indices. Okay, so we mentioned that in a previous video as well. Feel free to screenshot this page or just make a note of any of the ones that you want to memorize, a post-it note or something, and let's just carry on into the video. So, as we've spent 2 videos going through in a bit more depth, negative and fractional indices separately, I'm not going to go through it in too much, with too much explanation. All we're going to do here, as you can see, so find the value of 9 to the power of minus a half. We're literally just going to combine the two together. So the method for negative indices and then also the method for fractional indices. We're literally just going to take those two methods and put them together. Now, you can choose whether you want to deal with the fraction first or the negative first. I personally always do the negative first, just because I feel like it's so easy to forget about it, or you might forget to write down the negative part when you're working through the method and then you end up forgetting about it. So I always deal with the negative first because it's literally just one step, isn't it? And then just jump into the fraction part and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So we're just going to, as I said, put the two methods together. The method for negative indices is the reciprocal. Do you remember we said the reciprocal in that video? So that means flip the fraction upside down, or in the case of a whole number, 9, I can write it currently. It's the same thing as 9 over 1, isn't it? So the reciprocal is just flipping that upside down, which means 1/9. So I'm just going to do that immediately. So the negative part, so I'll put step 1, the negative, that makes it 1 over 9, and then I can just have to the power of a half. Now I can forget about the negative part. Then we said, okay, right, so now we're going to deal with the fraction. And with the fraction, you deal with it in 2 parts, don't you? Deal with the denominator first and then the numerator. The denominator, if you remember, it means the type of root that we need to do. So in this case, it's a 2, so square root. The other clue is obviously they won't get you to square root a number that's not a square number. Obviously 9 is a square number, isn't it? So that also hints. Technically that means we need to square root 1 over 9 as a whole. And then obviously the power of 1, that doesn't make any difference, does it? So I'm going to leave that. The square root of 1 over 9, you might think, how am I supposed to do that? Well, you just square root both numbers separately. So the square root of 1 is just 1. Square root of 9 is 3. And as I said, because the numerator is just 1, if I did that to the power of 1, it's the same thing, isn't it? So I'm not really going to write that down. And that's literally it. So I would recommend do the negative first, so take the reciprocal, then you can just deal with the fraction without having to worry anymore. Okay, let's try another one. So find the value of 8 to the power of minus a third. Now I'm going to, again, deal with the negative first so I don't forget about it. The negative means the reciprocal, and as we said, a whole number, we can flip it to make it 1 over 8, can't we? Now it's still to the power of a third, but that's now positive. Okay, now I can deal with the fraction. Again, here I've only got the denominator, haven't I? The numerator's 1, so I don't need to worry about that. But the denominator is the type of root, which in this case is the cube root. Again, there's a hint with the 8, isn't it? 8 isn't a square number, so we can't square root it. It is a cube number. That's why I say at the start, if it's really helpful to recognise the cube numbers from like 1 to 5, if that makes sense, because you don't want to have to try and figure out the cube root of something without a calculator if you don't know what it is. So I'm going to cube root, technically the whole fraction, right? But obviously the 1 at the top is still just 1, isn't it? Cube root of 1 is 1, cube root of 8 is 2. So my answer is a half. It's as simple as that. We are literally just piecing together the methods that we looked at separately in the other 2 videos. We're just stacking them on top of each other now. Okay, If you're already feeling like you know what to do, pause the video, try this one out yourselves. But let's go through it because as you can see, we've also now got a numerator that's bigger than 1. So find the value of 25 to the power of minus 3 over 2. Step 1, again, like I said, I'm going to do the negative first. That's just my personal preference. That means take the reciprocal, which for a whole number means 1 over. So 1 over 25, now to the power of 3 over 2. So part 2 is now into 2 steps, isn't it, actually, because we've also got a numerator that's bigger than 1. So we're going to do the denominator first, which means, in this case, square root. So I'm going to square root 1 over 25. And then the 3 is now just a whole number, isn't it? So let's do that. Square root of 1 over 25. As we said, square root just both numbers. So square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 25 is 5. And then I've got it to the power of 3. So I now need to cube it. Same again, just cube both numbers separately. So 1 cubed is obviously 1. 5 cubed is 125. Again, it's helpful to just have that memorized, so you don't have to be going, oh, what's 5 times 5 and then times 5 again. Just have it memorized. So your answer to this one is 1 over 125. Okay, by now you should be happy with this if you've obviously spent time in the first 2 videos. So pause this video and give this one a go. We're basically doing the same steps as last time. The only thing to be careful of here, though, is just really pay attention to what is the denominator and what's the numerator of the fraction, because we can get quite used to thinking, oh, square root, then cube it. But this one's different, isn't it? So find the value of 64 to the power of minus 2 over 3. So I'm just going to do the negative to get it out the way. So 64 is then going to become 1 over 64. That's the reciprocal of 64, isn't it? Now it's 2/3 as a positive fraction. Step 2 is the fraction, so the denominator is the type of root I need to take. So in this case, it's 3, which means cube root. So just be really careful. This one can be a bit of a trick question because you can see that 64 can be easily square rooted, can't it? But it's also a cube number. So just really pay attention to what have they given me. Is it cube root or square root? So cube root of 1 over 64, and then afterwards we need to square it, don't we? So the cube root is obviously 1, and then the cube root of 64 is 4. Again, memorize that number. That's much easier if you know it memorized. Then we just want to square both numbers. So 1 squared is 1, 4 squared is 16. So 1 over 16. It's literally as simple as that. So once you've memorized what to do in terms of how to deal with negative powers, how to deal with fractional powers, you just stack up all the methods together, one after the other. Okay, now we're introducing fractions as our base numbers as well. So find the value of 1 over 36 to the power of minus a half. I'm still going to deal with the negative first, so I don't forget. The negative means reciprocal. Now, in this case, the reciprocal, we've got 1 over 36, so the reciprocal is flipping that upside down, isn't it? 36 over 1. However, 36 over 1, this 1 doesn't really tell me any additional information, does it? Because if you were to simplify that, 36 divided by 1 is just 36. Okay, so it's no longer a fraction when we take the reciprocal of that. So I've got 36, now to the power of a half. And then we deal with the fraction, which we said, okay, the denominator means the root. In this case, you can kind of see 36 is a square number. We're going to square root 36. And the numerator is 1, so I'm not going to write to the power of 1 because that makes no difference, does it? So square root of 36 is 6. Okay, that's literally your answer for this one. So find the value of 125 over 27 to the power of minus 2/3. And again, if we're familiar with our cube numbers, you can kind of get a hint as to what's going to happen, isn't it? Because 125 and 27 are cube numbers. We can't square root these, unless you had a calculator, which you won't have. We're going to have to cube root them, aren't we? So you get a bit of a hint as to where we're going with this question anyway. So we know that step 1 is the negative power, isn't it? That means take the reciprocal, which in this case is a bit easier to flip the fraction upside down when you do actually have numbers bigger than 1 in the top and the bottom, isn't it? Then that's just to the power of 2/3. So we want to do the fraction next, but specifically the denominator. So 3 in the denominator means cube root. So the cube root of 27 over 125, and then to the power of 2, which is just the numerator. So the cube root of 27 is 3, the cube root of 125 is 5. We should just know those off by heart. And then we want to square 3/5. So square the 3, which is 9, and square the 5, which is 25. There you go, 9 over 25. That's your answer. Okay, so this is our last question. Pause the video, give it a go yourselves, and then come back and check your answer. So find the value of 16 over 81 to the power of minus 3 over 4. So, as we said, we deal with the negative first. That means reciprocal. So we get 81 over 16. We just flip it upside down to the power of 3 over 4. Then we deal with the denominator, don't we, which is actually 4 in this case. So that means the fourth root. So we want to take the fourth root of 81 over 16. And then we're going to cube it, aren't we? So don't be scared by that. Again, these should be numbers that I just said. Just memorize these one-off numbers. If not, take an educated guess. What number times by itself 4 times would get 16? Well, I think about 16. Okay, first of all, it's an even number, so we're going to have an even answer. Second of all, we know that 4 squared is 16, so it's an even number smaller than 16. Well, that only leaves us with 2, doesn't it? So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 does make 16. And then 81, same kind of logic, it's an odd number. Okay, so our fourth root is going to be an odd number as well. We know that 81 is 9 times 9, so it's going to be an odd number smaller than 9. Now, there are a few options, however, you can kind of narrow them down, can't you? So it's obviously not 5, right? Because anything multiplied by 5 has to end in a 0 or a 5. The only other option is like 3 and 7. So you can make an educated guess if you don't remember. That's obviously going to be 3. Okay, if they get you to the fourth root, it's probably going to be like 2 and 3. They're not going to choose bigger numbers than that. And then we want to cube it, so that's fine. 3 cubed is 27, and 2 cubed is 8. So your answer is 27 over 8. Okay, that's probably the worst one they can give you. So that is everything you need to know about negative and fractional indices. Thanks for checking out all of these videos. Hopefully now you know exactly what to do. There's some really easy marks to pick up. If you were a bit unsure of what we were doing, definitely go back and check out the previous 2 videos, which you'll find linked in the description below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave down below any other questions you might have.